Introduce, please.
Minister, I'd like to ask you what specific proposals or contributions that Ireland is making to the Foreign Affairs Council to ensure that the EU strategy to address the Syrian conflict and the refugee crisis is effective, but most importantly is respectful of international humanitarian law and EU humanitarian commitments.
Ireland and its EU partners are committed to ending the suffering of the Syrian people. A political solution is required to comprehensively address the humanitarian, human rights and refugee crisis, which are the consequences of the current conflict. Ireland and the European Union remain committed to supporting the UN's efforts to achieve an end to violence, the formation of an inclusive administrative structure with full executive powers, a constitutional reform process as set out in the 2012 Geneva Communiqué. This framework has been endorsed by the United Nations under Security Council Resolution 2254. I discussed the Syrian conflict with my EU colleagues at the Foreign Affairs Council meeting on the 17th of October. We were joined by United Nations Special Envoy Staffan de Mistura. The Council adopted conclusions condemning atrocities in Syria and in Aleppo in particular, calling for an immediate end to the bombardment of Aleppo and the protection of civilian populations across Syria, calling for an end to restrictions on the provision of humanitarian assistance and the lifting of all sieges, reaffirming the support of the European Union for a political resolution to the conflict in Syria, condemning the illegal use of chemical weapons by the regime and Daesh, calling for accountability to refer the situation in Syria to the International Criminal Court, and condemning in the clearest possible terms the unacceptable actions of Daesh. Minister of State Darragh Murphy participated in the November meeting of the Foreign Affairs Council, which discussed the Syrian crisis, including strengthening the European Union's diplomatic engagement with the regional states, including Iran, Saudi Arabia, as well as other key stakeholders, with a view towards creating the conditions for a renewal of political negotiations. The Council was briefed on that occasion by EU High Representative on the implementation of the European Union's humanitarian response to the crisis in Aleppo. On Monday of this week, I met with President of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Peter Laurer, here in Dublin. We discussed the humanitarian situation in Syria, and in particular in Aleppo, and the importance of full respect for international humanitarian law.
What I was specifically trying to get to was in relation to Ireland's role in upholding the rights of refugees and migrants. And we can't separate the conflict in Syria and the refugee crisis, and I and my party have consistently raised concerns about the EU-Turkey migration deal, and we have major reservations about it. Particularly, the EU-Turkey arrangement has been criticised widely as undermining refugee and migrant rights, and in light particularly of the crackdown by the Turkish government post the failed coup. We have over 90 journalists arrested, 2,500 civil servants have been sacked, opposition MPs have been imprisoned. In light of this, can Turkey really be designated a safe country? A safe country that we've entered into as an EU member to send people who are fleeing the conflict in Syria and beyond? Can it really be treated as a safe country? And do you not see, Minister, a paradox in Europe supporting the EU-Turkey migration deal and at the same time calling for countries to abide by humanitarian rights and laws and ensuring that refugee rights are upheld?
Minister.
Can I say in response that the Deputy raises an important issue as far as Turkey is concerned, and the European Union, its member states including Ireland, are keeping the situation in Turkey under close review in the light of what I might describe as very negative trends in Turkey. As a candidate country for membership of the European Union, I would expect, as would my international colleagues, expect that Turkey would adhere to essential democratic norms and to respect what we might describe as the core values of the European Union. And can I say that a regression from these norms, a regression from these values, is a cause of great concern for me, and it's an issue that I have raised on a number of occasions at international fora. Can I say that Ireland, along with our European colleagues, we're considering how best to influence Turkey and to encourage a commitment on the part of Turkey to return to fundamental freedom and core human rights.
Deputy O'Brien.
Yeah, I appreciate your response, but I think fundamentally the question that needs to be answered is that are you, Minister, on behalf of the government and the Irish people, happy to continue to support the EU-Turkey migration deal in light of the recent events in Turkey? I think the best message, whilst you say that there are negative trends in Turkey, these trends have continued for some time. If you look at the actions that the Turkish army are taking in northern Syria, if you look at the actions to crack down on opposition and the free press, we've had the National Union of Journalists in with myself and Deputy Sean Crowe in the Foreign Affairs Committee. And it's extremely serious. I think the idea of Turkey at any stage at this moment in time, or even aspiring to accede to EU membership, is actually frankly ridiculous. And I think that the best message that our government can send out is to extricate ourselves from the EU-Turkey migration deal. These third country arrangements are not good. They undermine the rights of refugees and migrants, and Turkey is certainly not providing a safe haven for these refugees who need it badly.
Minister, to conclude, please.
Can I say that a unilateral withdrawal from the EU-Turkey deal at this stage would not be in the best interests of migrants? I believe it's fair to say that since the deal was agreed, and it's far from a perfect deal, but nevertheless there has been something of an alleviation of the plight of the many hundreds of thousands of migrants in the region. Can I assure the Deputy that we will continue, Ireland will continue to play an important role in the debate on the matter of Turkey, the relationship between Turkey and the European Union, the matter of Turkey as an accession state to the European Union at some stage in the future. And I believe it's important that we send a clear and indeed united signal to Turkey of the concerns of the European Union and indeed the concerns of Ireland that I've had an opportunity of making on behalf of the Irish Government, on behalf of the Irish people. But I think it's important, and I would invite the Deputy to agree, the importance of keeping channels of communication with Turkey open in order to establish a framework so as we can ensure that the best interests of the European Union and indeed the best interests of the migrants are very much to the fore.
Thank you very much. Question 22 in the name